Welcome to Under the Hood Podcast. In this podcast, we pop the hood and give you an inside look at the hows and whys of our ministry here at Cornerstone Church. I'm Michael Nave, your host. Well, welcome back. I am so glad to have you with me today, and I am absolutely thrilled because today I am joined by Justin Adams, one of our elders. Justin, it is great to have you here.
Thanks, Michael. How are you, buddy?
Hey, doing really well. Hey,
Good.
roll back the clock. What year did you and Megan start coming to Cornerstone?
Yeah, appreciate you asking. I had to do a little math for myself on that. So my daughter's 13, so 12 years. So I think it's going to be around 09, 2010, somewhere in there. It's hard to always put a finger on exactly the membership point of that. But yeah, got to be around 2010, I would say. Yeah.
And then what year is this for you serving as one of our elders?
Yeah, I'm a little little long in the tooth as far as the elders go. This will be my 7th year.
Okay.
Yeah, going on 8, I suppose. Yeah.
That means highly experienced, right?
Yeah, that's it. You nailed it.
Well, Justin, I really appreciate you taking some time away from the office for a moment to jump in here and have a discussion. As you well know, several weeks ago, we started posting where we are year to date giving as compared to budget. Now, before that, we had always been posting, hey, what was given last week? What were the last 8 weeks? But we decided to add just another comparison to the reporting for full disclosure and let people know where we're at. And that has caused a little bit of concern because it has shown about a $50,000 deficit. And we've started having people ask questions. So thank you for being here so we could kind of talk that through and be willing to put your expertise and passion as a financial advisor, as a guy who's worked with many people on a budget. So thank you for jumping into the conversation. Are you ready for it?
Sure, of course.
All right. So let's start before we jump to the answering the question. Okay, what's the deal with this $50,000 and who's that impacting and what staff person or ministry is being cut? Let's back all the way up and talk budget 101. I have known you to work with many families and individuals from our church on their budget. What is a budget? Like, why is it important? I know that's a passion of yours.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So that was something my wife and I implemented soon after we were married. And it really was just kind of a life-changing experience with me because my wife would say I had a very bad relationship with my money. I thought saving everything was the key, and it didn't allow me to spend very freely in some areas that were important. So a budget's really important to me. It's obviously important for our organization here as well. So yeah, it's key that we set these things in place and use them to align where we spend our money every month.
Great. When you sit down with an individual or a family, like if somebody says, "Well, I don't have a budget," why is that so important? You mentioned your propensity to just save everything.
Right.
What if you sat down with a couple or an individual? They said, "I don't know why it's so important." What would you say in response?
Yeah, there's a sense of whether you make a lot of money. Generally, that question is going to come from somebody who makes enough to not worry about it necessarily. And the problem is that there's not a freedom in that. It doesn't outline where your money is going to go. You don't tell your money where you're going to go. Generally speaking, just as a very blanket statement, when I hear that, it also means those people aren't very free to give because they don't have an area set up for giving. That's just one little piece of it, but it bleeds into everything else. You got to organize that money, even if you make a ton of it, in order for it to be working in the proper areas all the time. It's just organization is all it is.
Yes. Oh, I love that phrase.
Yeah.
And it's been a popular one. Tell your money where to go.
Yeah.
Align your money to what you believe is important. Like if you're just spending it from month to month at the end of the year, you might be shocked where a percentage of your money went. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's the reason for a budget.
Yes.
Now, talk to us a bit about the role of our elders when it comes to the budget and accountability for that budget?
Sure, of course. So on a monthly basis, we sit down, we get extraordinarily detailed budget reports. Well, I'll just leave it at that. Extraordinarily detailed budget reports that have, every metric you could possibly ever imagine. Now, what we're doing there is just trying to make sure that this, as I said a minute ago, organization is in place. We're not trying to nickel and dime every single department or employee to try to make sure that they're not doing something out of whack. But, obviously there's oversight. But we're just trying to make sure the organization is in place for our money and that it's going where it's supposed to go on a monthly basis.
Okay. So your job in looking at these very detailed reports is to make sure that the spending is aligned to our values or priorities, the mission of our church, and that it actually got spent in that way. You've been doing that now for 7 years plus. Any surprises along the way when you started seeing those reports or the process or any changes we've made, anything like that you could give us any insights?
Yeah, I would go back to, 7 years ago when I first sat down with these budget reports, and we did it a little bit differently at that time, but I won't go into all that. But I expected some just some large margins as far as a little bit of slush, as you would say, maybe slush funds here and there. I expected there to be pretty broad margins in every department. But the reality is I found out extraordinarily quick, everybody is really, really frugal with their departments. Everybody is extremely well organized again with where their money goes. And nobody has been overspending in the 7 years we've been here. I can't remember a single department that's even gone more than 1% or 2% out of those boundaries. So, my surprise was more that there wasn't more room for people to overspend.
That's really, really encouraging. And as you just shared, it is our director's responsibility that, hey, if you go over in one area, you got to squeeze it out of another area. And so our team realizes and recognizes the responsibility that ultimately is to our elders on behalf of our congregation, that money is spent as it was budgeted for, and then also that those values are aligned to how we set up the budget.
Yeah. So
one of the unique pieces about Cornerstone is we don't vote on that budget. You're talking about an excess of $2 million that together, a whole bunch of normal people together collectively give a lot of money as Cornerstone Church. But we don't vote on that. We don't print out a sheet and let everybody take a look at it in detail. If someone were to walk up to you, and I hope someone in our congregation has said that to you over the years of like, hey, Justin, why don't we vote on the budget? Or how's this really work? What would you say if someone walked up to you and said, why don't we vote on this? And since we don't, how can I be confident in giving here toward the mission of the kingdom?
Gosh, what a loaded, large question. Okay.
Maybe I had 4 questions in there somewhere.
Questions there. Okay. Gosh, I don't...
Why don't we vote?
Yeah, why don't we vote? That's a good question. It goes back years, probably before my 7 years here. On our church constitution of designing a way to, number one, trust our leaders. We put all of these people in place, pastors such as yourself, all the way down to the last person hired here, and we trust them, right? And I hope our people trust our elders. I can tell you we've got a group of really good, smart men on there that aren't perfect at everything, but they're looking out for the best interests of both our staff and our people. And for that, we don't want the confusion of everybody voting. Right. That may or may not be the right thing, but we don't want that confusion. We trust our people.
And so when it comes to a budget, so, okay, more than $2 million, and we don't even vote on it. How was the amount for this year's budget set? Did a bunch of really smart elders get together and take a shot at how much they thought it would go up or not? Like, how was this year's budget set?
Yeah, no, that would be incorrect of us just sitting down and just shooting in the dark at that. it's been year over year done based on the previous year's giving. So
okay. What's that mean?
Whatever comes in the door, every last penny that gets given from our people is what our future year's giving is, or I'm sorry, our budget is based on. So we know, as long as we're trending relatively close, our budget should be relatively close each year.
Okay, so this year's budget is the amount of last year's giving.
Correct.
So next year's budget will be the amount of this year's giving.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
okay. And I do remember, before we transitioned to that model, I do remember thinking, okay, is it going to be up 6%? And what about inflation? And what's our growth rate? And it was so freeing. I'll be honest, I didn't like it at first because I like to look ahead and think there will be
more every year.
But it has been so freeing to say, all right, next year's budget is what this year's giving was. And that has been so freeing. And with that, we continue our trend of 15 years in a row of spending less than we have received, which is just so encouraging for us as a church.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with the budget being set, let's go back to that $50,000 behind. So right now, trending, when you take the budget and then you divide it equally over 52 weeks. Right now, in the week that we're in, we're about $50,000 behind.
That's right.
So who's suffering? What staff has been let go? What ministry has been stopped? I mean, that's a lot of money. How's that working for us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it was posed to me, actually, I don't remember who, but in church here not too long ago. And so the best way to explain that is I use my house budget. So we have a line item for clothing in our house, which, to be honest with you, is probably the last line, honestly. It's like kind of as everything else washes out, that's where we end up, But we also had a washing machine go bad last month, unexpected, whatever, there it is, got to pay for it. So the clothing line item gets dinged, and that's where the money comes from. So it's not exactly like my household was short that washer money that month and we were scraping to get by. It was simply we took it from a category that hasn't yet been spent.
Yes.
And so that's how I'd explain what's going on at Cornerstone right now. Nobody's going to miss a paycheck in the upcoming weeks or anything like that. But it's going to be taken from someplace that has not yet been spent. And maybe even the term taken from isn't correct. It's just money that's not been spent anywhere yet. So, my overall view on that is not very much panic at all. It's simply, we're a little short. We maybe overshot in an area or two, but we're in good shape.
There were two pieces at our last elder meeting that were really encouraging to me when that subject came up. Number one, it was the discussion of how our directors, and you mentioned that just a few minutes ago, are responsible to live within their budget. Yes. And so then they have freedom to say, okay, if this one's been a little more expensive, and this inflationary commodity has dinged my budget, I can go over here to the clothing line item and pay for the washing machine kind of thing. And so they have discretion to move funds within their budget. That is then reported to the elders, fully accountable. It's not that they're just like, I think I'm going to do this. So they have freedom within their funds to be able to take care of that. And the other thing that was really encouraging was a discussion that Nathan prompted, where really when you look at an annual trend, a higher percentage in regard to week basis is given toward the end of the year, as people look at their annual giving or their annual income, make those donations. And so there is still quite a significant hope that we'll finish, in the black. And yet, even if we don't, we recognize that responsibility to live within our budget, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot in that to reply to as well. Good points all around. Let me back up to the $50,000 deficit again.
Please.
As you briefly touched on right there, largely this comes from inflationary items.
Yes.
We're 8 some odd percent inflation year over year today, maybe more on that. But largely that $50,000 comes from inflationary items, things that, we budgeted, we spent, we bought exactly the number of items per se that we had set out to buy that year, and they just cost more. So a lot of that is coming from there. The next part of that is, giving is generally much stronger in December. You have people doing very smart things with their money coming from either, in my world, some tax loss harvesting, some qualified charitable distributions, all across the board, some ways that people have blessed us and the body of Christ through their giving in December. So we're very confident we're going to end up in a good spot at the end of the year nonetheless.
Yes. Wonderful. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And I would say to you, publicly and privately, either in either venue, we are committed as the staff of this church to live within our budget. And so we will be there.
Sure.
Even when COVID hit.
Sure.
And we saw, people in despair and some panic. All of us, had that anxiety back then. We very quickly took 20% out of the budget, and we said, "Hey, team, we must react to this crisis, this pandemic." And so we did, and we are committed to our church. I'm personally committed to our elders. We will live within our budget. Period. We will just do it, and then react responsibly and celebrate what God is doing. And we look up ahead, and our church is in a really good financial place. I think you would say, especially in the time you've been involved, best ever.
By far.
We continue to eliminate debt. One of the fun facts about Cornerstone is, for this building, we never borrowed more than the original purchase price. So we spent $2.5 million on this building. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we've put a lot more into this building along the way, and we didn't borrow any of that. Right. And so we've made our payment. As you know, we even paid a little extra recently, just in case interest rates rising kick us in 2 years when ours adjust. And so we're even a little ahead. But what we've done that's so impressive, and we owe about $1 million, 1.1 on the building.
1.1-ish. Yeah, I'd have to look that up, but I believe it's 1.1-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
And so we still owe that on the building, but we're making our payment ahead on that one. And then all of the things we've done to the facility, we've done it as we've had cash on hand, which puts us in a really good place financially. So we're in solid footing. We continue to react to inflation. We continue to react to people not being able to give, and things that have been restrained. And we continue to walk in faith, looking forward to a really exciting season for our church.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add as we're talking about that $50,000 short, or budget processes, or your role?
I think one thing I want to highlight about what you just said right there, that our people should know, just along the lines of the responsibility of this organization. You hit that we paid down some debt here a little while back. That was an extraordinarily smart move. Pending interest rates continue to stay extremely high. We'll have to reevaluate our loan in a few years, and we were concerned that at that point of securing a new loan on this place, or a new arm anyway, that our interest rates were going to be significantly higher on a $1.1 million loan. So that's not a small amount. And we wanted to make sure that our monthly budget didn't just get destroyed by that. So we had a little bit of a windfall of money from the purchase of property and things like that. And so we allocated that money. I want to say it was $93,000 or something along those lines, to pay down debt, assuming interest rates were going to reset around 7, I think is what we did there. So we actually have effectively lowered our payment right now, but in the event that it goes up to 7% for some reason, which it may or may not, we've protected ourselves in the future against that being a major problem for our budget that would have quickly made us in a $50,000 deficit again. So we've protected the future there by some really smart moves right now. So I just applaud you guys for that too. That was a really good move on your end.
Well, it is truly a pleasure to work with our elders, and those very detailed sheets that Jody and Elena have so faithfully provided to you guys prompt some really passionate, difficult even discussions revolving around money. We want to get it right, and we're working hard, and it is such a privilege to work with you and the elders to get it right and to make sure that our monies are aligned. Think budget, and that the spending is being spent as allocated, showing that we are reflecting the values of our church and the mission that God has given us of helping people follow Jesus.
Absolutely.
So, Justin, thank you for your role on the team. You are a blessing to me and have been a blessing to so many in our church to get their budget right and get back on track and be free in that area that really can take us prisoner if we're not really careful. So thank you for your service to our families, to our church, to me. Thank you for what you do.
Appreciate it. Thank you.